Hey, this is Kishore and Jason from Typesense. I look forward to answering all your AMA questions from Aviyel.
This question is from Yash, and he says, "Hi, Jason and Kishore. What changes did you experience professionally and personally after the project became successful? Kudos to the great product." So I'd say one thing that I've been able to experience by working on Typesense as an open source project is just being able to interact with so many different people across a diverse set of experiences, backgrounds, cultures, and different tech stacks that they're working on, and the kinds of problems that they're writing software to solve for. It just blows my mind to think about such diversity in how software is being used in the world. I mean, software, and then of course in the context of Typesense, search is being used for. So that is very interesting, and that's something that I would say in my professional career, like I've been in e-commerce and a little bit of consumer-facing apps in my career, and during that time, you're mainly interacting with maybe your team, and you're interacting with the vendors that you're integrating with, etc. But I probably say after I've started working on Typesense, I've interacted with way more people from around the world, and with developers around the world, and all my past experiences. So that definitely opens your mind up. It gives you fresh perspectives on of what it means to write software. Like that it shatters a lot of assumptions that you might have had in the past about even technology choices. Like there's one side of the world where you think that technology XYZ is super cool and popular, and that's what everyone should be using. That's what you should use when you start this new project. But then you talk to people, and people are still using other technologies, which some people might think as outdated, and people are writing integrations around it, and it's just so fascinating to see that people are doing interesting work regardless of their choice of tech stack, regardless of their location, regardless of the domain that they work in. It's just very, very interesting for me. And then I would say another unique thing about open source is that things are pretty transparent. There's no escaping bugs. It's out there for your issue tracker is out there for everyone to see, and for better or worse, I've had instances where I've had to say, "Yep, that was my bad. I introduced this bug. Sorry, here's the fix for it." So it introduces that level of transparency, which I think also builds trust in the ecosystem, that anyone can jump in and point, and people have taught me things saying that, "Hey, here's how you do this in," like I was picking up Vue recently, and someone pointed out saying, "Hey, maybe this is the more idiomatic way to do it," and it's like, "Oh, thank you." So I've learned a lot from the community as well, just by putting out stuff there. So what I would encourage others to do as well is, if you're thinking about, I am not experienced enough to do open source, or I'm not an expert to open source my work, I would say that's the last thing you need to worry about. Just put your work out there. You might be surprised to find even worse quality code out there. Use this as a learning opportunity to get feedback from the community, and that's how you improve as a developer, is to put your work out there, get feedback, and then iterate on it. And you're not going to come up with your masterpiece on day one, but maybe after you do it consistently for a couple of years, you might have picked up a thing or two. And so that's something that I would encourage anyone thinking about getting into open source contributions to do right away.
So this question by Stockster, right? So it says, what was it exactly that frustrated you so much that you decided to build your own search engine from scratch? I think Typesense started out as a personal, as you mentioned, a personal wish or a personal scratch, because there was no open source search engine that kind of worked out of the box. And in terms of the the maturity, in terms of like how, if you compare your experience setting up like a database with an ORM, right? Like you had Rails, you had Django. This was like 5 to 6 years back. So setting up a data store for searching was far more complicated than setting up a data store for your data store as your MySQL or something like that. So that there was nothing that really worked out of the box and solved some of the very common pain points, like typo tolerance. People make mistakes all the time when they are typing, but getting that going, that feature itself took like a lot of flags, a lot of configuration with existing open source solutions there. There were a few proprietary solutions, but those really they were also young and they were also very expensive. So yeah, the ecosystem I felt was just lacking, and surely there was a way to do bring a much better open source product in that space. So one is this whole developer productivity and ease of use aspect, and of course the other one is even if you solve all those issues, deploying that in production, high scalability, clustering, all of these were also complicated. So the reason to do it from scratch was so that you can control the full stack end to end, and we did use some libraries, but that were like low-lying libraries. So it's not like, obviously no software is 100% scratch. 100% scratch is when you don't even use any libraries. That's what it is. So we kind of built on top of like simpler libraries, and we built it all the way. So yeah, ease of use and ease of deployment, those were the two things that was missing then, and I still feel Typesense is still one of the better ones in all those dimensions even today, and of course we're going to continue working and improving that.
Yep. So this question is from Dino. They ask, what is the most important aspect of Typesenses user experience? Would you like to share one thing with your project's followers about the updates planned for the coming year? So I would say the key thing that we focus on for Typesenses user experience, and we like to call it developer experience, is ease of use and how intuitive things are. So compared to other solutions for search in the market, the last thing that we want to do is for people to have to learn yet another DSL to be able to just use Typesense. Instead, I think what developers are more used to these days is you make an API call to a service and it does its thing and it gets you the results back in a format that's familiar to you, so JSON. So that's what we focus on in Typesense. Is if you're looking at a parameter, for example, in an API call, we hope that everything makes intuitive sense, that you don't actually have to even read the documentation to understand what the parameter does, and hopefully you don't even have to use as many parameters besides the basic ones, because that's something that we do with every single parameter we add. Is we first of all evaluate if a parameter is even needed to be able to configure this particular behavior, and we spend an elaborate amount of time discussing that. And then if we say okay, there might be a need for this, then we make sure that it has a very good sane default set, so that it just works out of the box without any configuration for majority of use cases, and is still there available for people who might want to tweak that particular parameter. So, and that takes a lot of time. It's not as we finally refine all of that into what is what shows up as Typesense today. But there have been times where we've discussed for days, and actually there's this one particular feature I think we've been discussing for months now on whether we should do it or should not do it, and it's still discussions ongoing. So that's the level of detail that we put into before we say this is something that's going to simplify and improve the experience. So I would say that's one big thing that we focus on, and that's not just for during integration time, but it's also deploying to production and scaling the service. So we want to make sure that the same Typesense binary that you run locally can also scale out of the box without doing any other configuration in production as well. As long as you give it enough RAM and CPU, we want it to work out of the box in production as well, so that you don't have as much operational overhead. So that's another thing that we focus on as well. Now, in terms of what's coming next, I would say we typically look at our roadmap in terms of the next few months. I would say 2 to 3 months at the max, because we tend to prioritize a lot based on user feedback, and we anything that we say is going to come in a year out from now is probably is highly likely to change, because as users are using the product and giving us feedback and asking for different features, we tend to prioritize those over any grand plans we might have, because the last thing we might have this big idea of a thing, but if that doesn't end up actually meeting users' needs today, then it's just it's not going to be too productive. So which is why we tend to prioritize based on what users are asking us right here and now, of course, as long as it fits in the overall vision of the direction of the product that we're taking it in. So along those lines, the key things that we're working on right now are improvements to performance around updates, mainly. It seems like people are using us for a lot of real-time updates, and we're trying to optimize performance around that. And then we're also working on some what I like to call edge cases that people run into in terms of feature sets. Like the basic implementation is there, but then people need these little extra features. In a case in point, just today, we launched GeoSearch recently, and someone asked, can you find overlapping areas to see if there are any common geo areas in a given set of records. And whereas we currently have a feature where, given a lat and long, you can find all the records that are close to that particular lat long. Now they're starting to ask about geo areas, which is the next evolution of the feature. So things like this that are evolutions of features that we already have. As more and more users are starting to use the engine, we're getting all these interesting features. So that's those are things that we will be prioritizing as well. And then, of course, in the other thing that gets us excited is if someone is using Typesense in a totally unique, interesting, we've never thought about that Typesense can be used in this particular type of use case, then that's something that gets us excited, and we try to engage with the user, ask questions to see if that's something that's easy enough to pull off, or if we need to maybe put it for later, and that's what shapes our long-term roadmap.
So there's this good question about what practices make a good maintainer, and what advice I would give to someone who wants to start contributing to open source community. Number one advice is having a good README, because you really want someone stumbling on your repository to know what the project is about, have real world examples that they can use to solve their particular problem, and that will be the really starting point. If you have a repository with very little information, then people are not going to just spend their time to figure things out on their own. And also make sure that you have a good test coverage from day one. The code that you're publishing, you want to make sure that people can use it without bugs creeping in when you make changes to it. So you want to have that confidence, so have a good test coverage. When people contribute to the repository, encourage them to add tests and improve it. And also ensure that you are having a really careful about upgrades and ensuring backward compatibility, because if people keep upgrading libraries, and there'll be tens of hundreds of libraries in their project, when they upgrade, they don't want to suddenly go figure out which one of those updates actually caused a problem. And finally, responding to issues in a timely manner. Your project can become popular, you'll have a lot of questions, but at least telling people, hey, I'm busy, I will get back to you, or asking for more details, those are all things that will really encourage the community. And you can even delegate some of your work to people, so that the project can grow, and it is larger than you, right, when a lot of more people contribute to it.
Yeah, so this question was from Noah, and he asked, so when did you guys decide that you will be working on the project full-time and that it won't be a weekend thing anymore? So this happened, I would say, in 2020 for me. So we saw a good bit of traction and interest from the community. We posted it on Hacker News, and it reached the front page, and I think we got about 440 points. And there was so much feedback that we got, and so much interest that there was a need, that it helped validate that there was a need for a product like this in the market. And that was good to see, because before that, so we started working on the project in 2015. So to see this, our last 4.5 years of work resonate so much with the community, so that was very encouraging. So that was a big factor in the decision. And also the opportunity in front of us, we realized that like search is something that every software product eventually needs in one way or the other. And so the market opportunity is huge, and there are not enough good, easy to use solutions in the market. So we saw that, we have to go after this market, and people are telling us that there is a need for this. So we would, if we didn't do it, we'd probably be throwing away a big opportunity. That, and then finally, I would say there were also a certain set of asks from users around, like, hosting and more engaged support for the product as they use it. So these were things that also showed us that, it could be an open source product, and we can also monetize it. So there is a business model around it that we could figure out. So the fact that we saw a path to being able to monetize this was another big factor that encouraged us to start focusing on this full time. So after a couple of months, towards the end of 2020, actually Q4 of 2020, we launched Typesense Cloud. In the meantime, someone asked us for a support offering, so we put out like a paid prioritized support offering as well. So we've kind of been able to drive our progress based on what users are asking, and that's also driving us in the path of monetization. So I think a happy coincidence of all of these together helped us make the decision to go full time on it.
This question from Nitish, asking about, like, how we handle horizontal scaling, how is it implemented in Typesense. So if you broadly look at horizontal scaling, you do it for two reasons. One, you do it because you want to handle high amounts of traffic, so you are not bound by a single machine. You can add multiple machines and scale that way. The second reason is you do it for high availability, because if one of the machines go down, you still want the other machines to help serve the request, and your users don't get affected by that downtime. So with Typesense, we have a clustering implementation that is based on the Raft protocol. You create a 3-node or a 5-node cluster. The odd number matters because the way Raft works is it waits for a majority of nodes to reply. So you can only get a majority when there are odd number of nodes in a cluster. So you'll run a 3-node or a 5-node cluster, and then the Raft protocol takes, so you have a leader, and you always write to the leader, and the followers kind of pull the data from the leaders. And then if your leader dies or a follower dies, you have an election, and a new leader gets elected. So this is basically a Raft protocol. Typesense implements that. That's our clustering. We do not have sharding, in the sense all the 3 nodes or all the 5 nodes will have the same data. So it's just a mirror replica of the data set on all the 3 nodes. The reason we didn't go for sharding is primarily because for the use cases that we are targeting, reasonable scale, not web scale like terabytes that's not our focus, at least for now. Maybe we will get there when our customers lead us to that path. But you can today get instances with 100 plus GB of RAM very easily, in the sense it's not, you don't need specialized hardware. You can rent it on AWS or on any of the cloud providers. So that is enough headroom for for lots of data, right? You can store a lot of records in 128 GB or a 180 GB RAM machine. So we want to vertically scale as much as possible in the single node configuration, and then we use a Raft for high availability, so that if one node goes down, the other nodes can serve. So that's how we think of scalability. Maybe in the future, if people want to scale even further, then we could maybe build some orchestration around multiple clusters. You can have a second Typesense cluster, and then on the client you'll be able to query either one of them based on some form of sharding configuration or something like that. So but for now, this is how it is, and it's gotten really good feedback for us because it's very easy. People who have run other search clustering solutions know how difficult it is to run it at scale. So we have chosen to simplify this architecture, kind of checks off most of the use cases for maybe 90 to 95% of the people, so that has clicked well with the community.
Hi Kishore and Jason, wanted to know, how do you two fully maintain such a complex project staying in different time zones? So that's an interesting question, because we've actually been doing this for more than a decade now, working across time zones. So we've kind of been a remote distributed team for more than a decade. Before it was a popular thing. So one of the things that we do is we make sure that all communication is written. That helps us really structure our thoughts and helps cut down a lot of I would say communication overhead that we've typically seen when having live face-to-face communication. So it does take a little bit more time, but I think the net of us being able to structure our thoughts when we respond well, even if it takes a little bit more time, I think has helped us in net speed things up in terms of how quickly we can get on the same page on different things. And we also have defined areas of ownership that we have minimal dependencies. So we're able to iterate fast on things that were in our domains. And finally, we also have a lot of automated tests. So, that's the only thing that's keeping us sane, I would say. If anything breaks, our test suites automatically catch it and they run on every commit. So that has definitely helped us as well. All right, thank you everyone for joining us for the AMA. That was fun. Thank you for spending the time asking us these questions. We had a lot of fun answering them. Some of the questions were thought-provoking to us and also helped us reflect back on our journeys. So it was a little bit nostalgic as well. So hope to see you around.